Welcome to Keeping Up with Trends. This is Fed Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading, and we're joined with your host, Sergio Davids.
Hey man, always a
What's
pleasure to
doing?
be here. You know what? It's sunny outside. Finally, my flowers are in bloom. Uh, got a little bit of a mini garden, so I can't complain. Things are good, man. Things are good.
Fantastic. What is going
Yeah.
on? What's on our list today?
Well, it's earning season, Q3 2023. So about a week ago, all the major banks kicked things off, and it's funny. I'm just reminded of one of our earlier podcasts. I think it was 2 months ago with the whole banking crisis. And, when everyone is saying, oh, what's going to happen? Are banks going to fail? And all major banks, Goldman Sachs, etc., beat their earnings. So clearly, it was a bit
The one you
presumptuous to
always have
say.
to look up to is JP Morgan and Goldman. Those are the two that you have to look up to. Those are
Yeah.
the,
If,
I
if,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
the guy who runs JP Morgan,
Yeah.
what's his name? He's been Jamie Dimon. He is probably one of the most talented Americans in the U.S. And there's a clip with him who discusses the greatness of the United States. United States has tremendous amount of advantage. It's completely surrounded by water. I mean,
Hmm.
Canada and Mexico doesn't really count. I mean, if you think about it. So it's completely isolated from the rest of the world, which gives it a tremendous strategic
Yeah.
advantage, in terms of protection, in terms of army, and for that. Now, economically, it's the most capitalistic you could possibly imagine. Someone said, so some of the people that I've spoken to who were, I grew up in New York, and there was a lot of people from Europe, either Italian, Irish, or from Poland, or from any one of these countries in Europe that came to the United States. And they always said, everybody says the same thing. If you work hard in the United States, you're fair, you're honest, you're good, you should be able to make it good well in America. And that's
Yeah.
the truth. That's the truth. And, it's a very capitalistic country. It is difficult. I'm not saying it's not difficult. Competition is fierce. But if you provide a decent service, you're honest, you have good rapport with your clients, no matter what you do, whether you're an optometrist, whether you're a dentist, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a real estate developer, whatever it is, United States provides people with tremendous opportunities.
Well,
Um,
well, seeing as how it's still, the world's number one economy, and it doesn't look like that title's going to be taken away
I don't
anytime
know.
soon. Well, this China, I think a lot of eyes would be on China, but
Everybody looks at the competition outside. I would argue that the inner struggles of the United States right now are much more
yeah,
difficult. It's the political unrest. I don't want to highlight certain groups because certain groups have certain connotations. If I do highlight certain groups,
yeah.
but there is a anti-America establishment in the United States as well that wants to break down America's imperialism. Now, it doesn't. I'm not. It's not to say that America is fair to the rest of the world. It's not.
I
You
think I think you're onto something. I think America's maybe on a tipping point. More so than they have been in, I would say, at least 20 years.
Oh, for sure, for
You
sure.
know,
I'm saying,
there's a lot of extremism on either side.
I think
So,
since Reagan left office, things have been pretty. I mean, I think his entrance into office kind of set the path to where we are right now, where things have been pretty leveled off. And I would
j-
say that it stopped being leveled off from Bush Jr. When he was president. That was really where we saw ourselves going back and forth on the
uh,
pendulum.
th- you know, it's the weirdest thing for me when people can wrap, the entire identity around like a political party. For example, do you remember when when Americans, right? It used to be a case of, are you a Republican or Democrat? Just used to be a case of, do you think we should be supporting business or do you think we should be supporting social services? I mean, there was a fine line between differences of how you would be spending, taxpayer money. Now it's a case of your entire identity is wrapped up in one or the other.
Right. It must mean
Like
that you think
nobody,
like
you
this.
gotta be, yeah, and no one is talking to each other. They're
Right.
talking at each other.
If you're a Democrat, you're a liberal, you're a vegan,
Exactly. You
you're
must be these things.
anti-establishment.
And if you're a Republican, you must be conservative. You must be anti, X, Y, and Z. It's so crazy for me how we've gotten to this level of extremism. Everything is extreme. No one has,
Well, I think
but
the
of
media is really very much
yeah, fueling the
responsible for it.
fire since for the past 20 years. And
But
it's
I think
bad because,
that's the only way they stay in business is that they keep on trying to compete with each other.
it
Uh,
yeah, it's sad and dangerous. It's sad and
it's
very
very
dangerous.
dangerous. However,
Look, yeah,
it's still a capitalistic economy,
yeah.
and no
Well,
matter which side of the aisle you are, if you do break that tipping point, that
yeah.
means everybody's not going to be able to, afford the luxuries that they have.
And speaking of tipping points, Netflix, about a year ago, things were a bit very dodgy for Netflix, especially in terms of company earnings and their reputation. And they've managed to turn things around. I was quite skeptical about their crackdown on password sharing, but it seems to have paid off for them. They beat another quarter and managed to add about 9 million subscribers. So yeah, Netflix managing to turn things around.
Yeah, and they increased. I believe they increased the price of their services, so it
Yeah.
costs more.
So
Um,
and with that,
and
there's going to be a cheap model. I think about 6.99.
wow, so
So yeah,
and they've developed their own shows in
yeah,
house.
yeah.
So
In-house
yeah,
content
so this
with
was a
big names.
startup. So this is an example of a startup that went up against Hollywood,
Yeah,
and is a major contender.
yeah.
Um,
It's just on what we're talking about Netflix and a startup, right? I thought you might enjoy this. So remember how Netflix started, right? They were a company where you could have DVDs delivered, to your house or videos delivered to your house. Remember, it was kind of like a blockbuster,
I
you
didn't know
know.
that. I
Yeah,
wasn't
that
familiar with the
when
company actually.
yeah, Netflix first started as a subscription service and they had physical stores. Obviously, they went the way of Blockbuster, and turned to online streaming, which was amazing for them. But get this, as of 2024, they will have physical stores again.
Interesting.
How crazy is that? Brick and mortar store. It came off
For
an
what?
idea
For
that started.
rentals?
Well, they've been a bit cagey about the details, but earlier this year they had a pop-up store called Netflix Bites, where it was like a restaurant where they invited famous chefs that starred in Netflix shows to cook for people, and it was an amazing success because why wouldn't you want eat good food prepared by celebrity chefs? And now they've announced that there's going to be at least two locations in the US. They haven't chosen the city. There's an online poll to ask where they should have their next two stores. But how's that? Imagine they are actually, selling. I don't know. I'm not going to say DVDs again, but imagine we've gone full circle in terms of technology.
Seriously, that's how they took
Okay.
out.
Okay.
I mean, saying that's how they took out
Well, they
Blockbuster to
destroyed
begin with.
Blockbuster.
You're
But
right.
imagine your Blockbuster. Okay, there's one Blockbuster I think is left in Alaska, and it's funny. They actually tweeted a picture of the story about Netflix about to build their physical stores, and the caption was, "Oh boy, should we tell at Netflix how this ends?" Obviously just alluding to it's a bad idea to have physical, video stores. But the fact that your company started doing that, then moved to digital streaming, and now is going back to that, it's crazy.
It is
Like,
interesting.
so for example, right in Cape Town. About 6 years ago, a company opened up an LP record store. As in physical LPs that you could, well, you play it on one of these new digital LP players, right? But it sells LPs, and it's been doing well. It's been doing so well to the point where next door they opened up a cassette store.
Interesting.
Now, I grew up on cassettes, and it's insane for me to think there's a store now where you could buy cassettes. I don't know where you would play a cassette. I have no idea what technology you're going to use to play a cassette. We're going to whip out our own our old hi-fis and and boom boxes again. But just technology being cyclical is amazing for me. Like can you imagine your kids using cassettes and LPs?
No, not at all. I mean, sometimes I show it to them and they're like, "What is this?"
What is this crazy thing? You mean this tape? This tiny tape holds songs? How is that possible?
And I feel like
You
an
know?
old man saying, when I was a boy.
No. I feel the same. Someone's like, what is this technology?
But
I
that's
had I had someone had a nephew look at me with great concern when I was talking about a landline. I mean,
I mean,
and
I know a lot of people that don't have any phones back in their homes
yeah,
because they just say, "Why should I have a phone in a home?
when
I
I've got
have a cell
a cell
phone, and
phone.
I'm on my cell phone most of the day."
Yeah. Anyways, moving on from
Hello.
just moving on from Netflix, we've got Tesla.
Right. So Tesla
So
missed, and Netflix.
yeah,
Um,
Netflix gained, Tesla missed. It's I
I
mean,
guess you could call it hit or miss. No, but I'm saying like let's take a look at it for a second. I mean, Tesla is looking at a corporation that is trying to draw the upper middle to upper class, I would say, right? People who could
yeah, in
appreciate
terms of
that type
pricing,
of,
sure,
not just
and
in
it's
terms of
still
pricing, but also in terms of the demographic of the type of
yeah,
clientele that
it's
they
look, it's
deal with.
still niche. If you compare it to fossil fuel cars, it's still going to take at least a few years for it to become mainstream. Tesla is the most mainstream electric car producer, but electric cars are far from, the norm. But I mean, Tesla hasn't missed an earnings since 2019, and
I
Elon
was
Musk,
expecting this.
yeah,
I'm expecting this because this is really where
yeah,
brand loyalty will really come through, because this is
it,
really the time where people are going to be renewing their Teslas after
yeah,
having it for 3-4 years, 5 years tops, right?
yeah.
And you're replacing it. And what are you replacing with? Well, there's a competition called Lucid, which is blowing them away. So they're going to have to get back onto the drawing board, no pun intended.
Well, it's funny you should say that because Musk, to quote, he said, "I'm worried about high interest rate. I'm worried about the high interest rate environment we're in. If interest rates remain high or they go even higher, it's that much harder for people to buy our cars." And then he goes on further to say, "I can't emphasize enough how important costs are. We have to make our products more affordable so people can buy it."
So he's not entirely looking for the upper niche class. America has a very small upper. I'm talking about like the 2%, as they call
Oh,
them
yeah,
in
yeah.
America.
Yeah.
So it has a very small amount of it who own a lot of money in the United States, and they have a tremendous amount of capital. They're called the Red Barons, and everybody's trying to demonize them for being so wealthy. Includes Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison, all the big tech guys.
I wouldn't have a problem if they just paid their fair share in tax. I
I don't
would
think that they
never.
don't. They do pay their fair share of tax, but there are loopholes that are made for
Exactly.
them. But
So they're
that's
taking advantage of a system,
I don't know if they're taking
and
it.
it's the
The system
system that
was
needs to
no,
change
no.
because
You
the
see that
system doesn't work if you're poor.
that is
That's an
where
issue
you and
I
I
have.
disagree, Sergio. I don't think that they didn't make the system; they're just subject to
Sure,
it.
sure. And in one way, I think the system definitely needs to change. But
Well,
I don't have an
but that's
issue
not up
with
to
them
them.
having
That's
so
up to
much
the
money. You know,
establishment of the government to change that. They can't change that, even if they
it's
wanted to.
yeah, it's very
And they all
dangerous to
said it.
have. Yeah,
Warren Buffett said it. Bill Gates said it. You said you
no,
want to take more money. Take more money from me. It doesn't make a difference
well,
to them.
Musk exactly, but they should be doing like Musk, for instance, very reluctantly, paid what 9 billion in taxes. Great, that's it. I don't have any issue with that. Cool, just pay your fair share. That's all. That's all I ask.
No,
But
but you're
yeah,
implying that they're not paying their fair share. What I'm trying to
yeah,
say to you is that
it's
the
been
current
proven.
no, but I'm saying to you is that currently, based on the tax brackets and tax
Yeah,
necessities that they need to pay. Now, we're talking about corporate tax, we're talking about personal taxes. I mean, like, this is
yeah,
kind of funny because, Bernie Sanders used to be the poster child for being against these kind of guys, the Robin Barons.
yeah.
And it's kind of funny because they called him out and they said, Bernie, how much money do you make? How much money do you have in
Yeah.
your bank? And he got a little bit, you could see from the interview, he got a little bit like, what is it to you? I have $2 million in my account. I have a
Right.
book and I have this and I have that. So I said, why don't you give it away? If you're not using it, give it away. And he just got a little bit stingy and he didn't say
I
anything.
think I think it's very dangerous to have a mentality, a jealous, mentality. I don't have an issue if people have billions and billions of dollars. It would be nice if they used some of that, if they spread some of that wealth, and a lot of
They
them do.
do.
I mean, Bill Gates, I think
They
by
do. They
2030
do. Come
might
on. You know
be
that they
giving
do,
away.
Sergio.
I know they do. They're one of the biggest. The 1% is one of the biggest contributors to charities around the world. I get it. I just have an issue when we use a system in place to avoid things that poor people have to do. That I have an issue with.
But
But I hate
but
this
that's
mentality
part
of,
of being a capitalistic because if
yeah,
I
but
cap
yeah,
you, if I cap you, then I've
yeah,
taken the fun out of the game.
sure. But
Even
the
on their
game, yeah,
levels. Like, do you
yeah.
not think that, at a certain point, Bill Gates looks at at the newspaper and he says, "Hey, my stocks are down, and that means that I'm not worth as much as Jeff Bezos is. I got to do something about that." Do you
I
not think
think
that that tickles
I
him every so often?
I think there's very much what we would call one-upmanship,
For
you know,
sure.
in that bracket. For example, we saw not even a year ago when all three of them, Bezos and uh, Musk, not physically but using his tech, and Bezos, all try to get to space. There was that weird space race for about 6 months, and that was all about one-upmanship. For them, I don't have an issue with them having money, and also it's a dangerous mentality to always think of your neighbor and what they have, as opposed to how you can increase your own wealth. I hate that.
I mean,
Um,
listen,
it's never mind Bezos.
capitalistic system is
People,
not
yeah,
a perfect system, Sergio. I
no,
don't I don't say that it is, and it doesn't necessarily imply that people are going to be moral and ethic and just and fair. And a lot of people in the United States have made money nefariously. I mean, these people made money. You want to call it honestly, if that's a loose term for honestly. I mean, they did. I mean, that Bill Gates, bought the DOS system, in
yeah,
order to, but he bought it. The guy didn't know what he had, and here Bill Gates said, "You got something, and you don't know that you got something." So one person's garbage
yeah,
is another person's treasure.
yeah,
So I hear it. I just don't. That's the extremity. I'm talking about the middle class. Now in
mm,
America, you have a very large middle class. It's gotten shrunk over the years. So it means people are either upper middle class or they're lower class.
mm,
And so that has been, the widening effect in the United States. I'm not talking about, there's a difference also from state to state, right?
yeah,
If you live in California or New York or
yeah.
Florida
You
or
pay
Texas,
higher or lower taxes. Yeah,
you're paying usually higher taxes and you're earning relatively. I mean, if you're living in Tennessee and you're whatever it is that you're doing, it's much more difficult to sustain that type of lifestyle on that income in New York, right? Because the rents are more expensive, the houses are more expensive, um, and once that happens, everything is more expensive, right? If the
yeah,
rent is more expensive for you, the rent is also more expensive for the supermarket, and their prices
yeah.
are
Everything,
inflated as well. So that's the situation on the ground in the States right now. I think what Musk is saying when he talks about the inflation, when he talks about the interest rate and saying that, if it continues going where it's going, he's talking to that middle class. He's not talking to that upper echelon, because that
Hmm.
upper echelon doesn't affect them. This type of markets, I've
Yeah,
always said it, money just moves, doesn't
exactly.
disappear.
And speaking of money moving, what advice do you have for traders out there this earnings season?
So I would really not trade before the trade. I would wait for the news to settle. I would wait for the
Right.
dust to settle. We've seen it once, time and time again, where you expect it, or even the news was fantastic, and then the stock or the particular asset didn't follow through because it was already factored in. All these type of situations in the markets do happen in these type of environments. You just have to be conscious of it, um, and
Yeah.
just wait for the move. Wait for the dust to settle and see how everybody's going to respond to it. I mean, no one can predict, as you could see from today's action. Uh, Tesla
Yeah. I
sold
mean,
off, and
and Netflix
Netflix.
rose. I mean, if you had called it with Netflix, good on you. But I would never have thought Tesla would have missed an earnings. You know,
But you see, that's the case.
and he
That is
probably would
why
have lost
we
a lot of
don't
money.
go as technical traders. We don't go into a position. We don't take a position going into a number. It's very simple. Just you don't do it because you never know. We're not prophets, just human.
Yeah. And I think on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Fred, for all your awesome trading advice.
Fantastic, Sergio. Keep well.
Cool. I'll see you on the next one, man.
God bless.